Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, July 7th, 2025. We just have the one item on tonight's agenda. We thought we were going to get a night off, but this one kind of cropped up within the last couple of weeks. It's about the trees and median maintenance over in Silver Lake. And I know that Mr. Circle got involved in that, and Mr. Fearborn has been handling it with the HOA president. And I'll let you take it away, Jim, so you can kind of give the historical perspective on this.
Thank you, sir. As the mayor indicated, we were really hoping we'd be able to give you all a surprise night off, but unfortunately, this issue's kind of cropped up, and it's kind of a it seems like a very simple issue. On the face of it, it gets a little bit more complicated when you know the history and some things that we need to be doing, which is what brings us here tonight. So Councilmember Circle was contacted a couple of weeks ago and immediately called me. He was contacted by one of his constituents who lives in Silver Lake, and they had indicated that there were some dead trees there. And and that individual had contacted somebody, I assume who they had thought was in an official position, and that somebody had told them, well, the city's responsible for cutting the trees down in Silver Lake. And then there is a long history that goes with this. The city is, in fact, unofficially responsible for cutting down dead trees in Silver Lake. And I emphasize the unofficial here, which is what brings us in front of you all tonight. I get really uncomfortable with money being spent unofficially without the council being aware of things that are going on, and specifically without the council having some sort of a formalized agreement with an HOA if that is in place. Councilmember Circle, no good deed goes unpunished. So last week, Councilmember Circle was contacted again about an additional 2 trees that are dead right down here just south of Broadmoor as you pull in on Broadmoor on Johnson Drive. So here's the situation that makes this an unofficial agreement. And I knew about this being in place. When Mr. Berlin left, he said, I'm going to be cursing you with 2 things. One is this unofficial agreement, and number 2 is going to be the Water District 10 situation that's in place. He kind of put those both on about the same plane at the time. The issue becomes all new development, every other development that we have in the city, the medians are the responsibility of the HOA and that neighborhood by virtue of being memorialized in development agreements. They are owned by the organization, and they are the organization's common area maintenance to provide within all of those. Fox Ridge Drive's a perfect example with Cooper Communities and that HOA that's up there for Creekmore. In this case, that was way before we had the sophistication that we have now when Silver Lake went into place. And so there is no discussion about who owns the medians. By virtue of the fact that it's single lane roads and the medians are in the middle of it and everything is silent to it, that's city right of way. Therefore, the maintenance in there, and it's always been interpreted as the city owns those. Technically speaking, nobody owns those, and we're responsible for the right of way. Something that we're hoping the council will give us the okay to change, if you will. So having all of this confusion in place, in July of 2012, on a number of items, Mr. Berlin, without council approval or without council vote on anything, wrote to the HOA and entered an informal, not even an agreement, gave them an official outline of several different items and who would be responsible for those items. Silver Lake Spillway and Dam. Silver Lake is responsible for the maintenance of the dam. The city is responsible for the maintenance of the spillway for the dam. Trees on Lucy Webb Road between Lakeshore Drive and Silvertop, a part of this discussion, because the first phone call that came in a couple of weeks ago is actually trees that you can see that are dead in our right-of-way along Lucy Webb Road. In that case, it was that the city will maintain the trees in the right-of-way and the association will mow the grass. Johnson Parkway medians, which is the complexity of this situation, the association will mow the medians and the city will be responsible for tree maintenance in the medians. Should removal of a tree become necessary, it'll be accomplished at the city's expense. Should the HOA want to replace the tree, the city will replace the tree for the HOA, but then bill the HOA for the replacement of the tree. As you can see, this thing's all over the board. The formal entrances are entirely the responsibility of the HOA because of the signage that's in those. More of an ownership, and they describe this as our ownership of those formalized entrances. Then it goes into snow removal and street maintenance and curb maintenance and sewer maintenance, obviously all the city's responsibility. It was just a very odd letter and left more questions, quite frankly, than answers. So now we are here. It had reached kind of a point where it was okay because trees weren't dying. Now trees are obviously dying, and we had two pretty solid contacts with them. Mr. Moorhead was a good contact with them, and Mr. Peterman was a good contact with them. We've lost those contacts now. So we've lost the historical context, and we've lost the ability for the HOA to talk to us formally. So what the agreement calls for is we will do nothing unless we are contacted by the HOA. That got violated once. We were actually contacted, and none of my colleagues here at the table will remember this. We were contacted by an individual, similar to what happened to Mr. Serco twice, that was not an official personage, and we actually went down there and cut one out. While it was a dead tree and it would have fallen back on the agreement, we did receive a phone call on why you down here cutting trees out without the formal contact being made. Because it was a dead tree, it kind of rolled over. We don't want to be in that situation where we're accused of doing something we're not supposed to do. So one of the first thing that needs to be in place, we feel, is an actual MOU that's formalized between the city council and the HOA. Because as trees continue to die, the city's going to be on the hook, and the city taxpayers are going to be on the hook for a lot of money. I mean, bare minimum, you look at tree needs to come out and stump needs to get ground, you're looking at $1,000. You get something like these 2-3 trees really that are down on Lucy Webb that are in power lines, you can get up on a $5,000 ordeal. You get a couple of those trees, all of a sudden we're over the 10,000 limit where the council needs to be informed, or there needs to be an agreement in place that the council has given me the authority to spend that kind of money. That's why the city manager with this whole thing is a little bit nervous, palms are a little bit sweaty until we get something in place, again, while we're here tonight. So if I can just real quickly outline, and remember, we still have to meet with the HOA. The new HOA president has some background in this. We've actually met with them over the course of 6-7 months, trying to get to what does this actually say, because The follow-up to it, like I say, the simple form of this is we go down, we cut a dead tree out, but there's nothing in this that then after that, what's the status? How do they pay us back? If they want a tree, they've never asked for that. What happens to the median eventually if they never have a tree cut out? We need to get a closure to all of this. Probably our recommended goals that we'd like to get to with them in an MOU that you all would ultimately approve, and that's kind of mainly what we're looking for is up here, you all's okay that we go into a negotiation knowing that eventually there's going to be something in front of you legislatively to approve. But I didn't even want to go into negotiations with them until I had filled you all in and gotten that okay. So number one, an MOU goal would be when the city, so that we don't change the long-standing practice. When contacted by a designated HOA representative, which would be outlined in the MOU, we will cut down dead trees only. Dead trees only, because one of the worries in all of this has been, what if they come in and they ask us to clear cut? Because if you go all the way back to the beginning of this, one of the reasons for the trees in the median was to provide a canopy over Johnson Drive. The trees in private yards now provide plenty of canopy in Silver Lake over all of Johnson Drive. And in fact, we think that's one of the reasons the trees in the medians are dying is because there's so much shade there now. We will not replace trees. We would like the council, we think that needs to be an ultimate goal, even though this talks about a replacement. If they're going to be replaced, we don't want that liability of being out there watering and doing all of that. If they have the money to pay us back, they can go out if they want them replaced and replace the trees themselves. They're going to have to pay for it anyway, probably be cheaper. Once all of the trees have been removed, you have a median, they're not in the mode of wanting to remove a tree or replace a tree. I think our number 4 recommendation would be that the HOA takes over the ownership and continued maintenance, because they're actually providing the maintenance. With the exception of the trees, they're mowing all of these. And whatever they wanted to do with, and that's the big change here, that they would take over this mysterious ownership situation that right now nobody has, but they'd acknowledge their ownership and perpetual maintenance of these going into the future. Obviously, we would still be responsible for the curb on the median, the road next to the medians, et cetera, just like we are anywhere else. Number 5 would be that the trees on Lucy Webb right now are actually in the right-of-way. We would continue to maintain those the same way with the medians. We would cut them out. We would not replace them, and that's actually contemplated in the letter anyway. Cut out, but don't replace. Don't know why those trees were ever planted. The basis of being a tree is that they grow, and all of those are growing into power lines now. So they never should have been planted where they were planted anyway. All of these trees, well, I'll get to there. Spillway in the dam. The dam remains the responsibility of the HOA, which I know for that particular HOA, we have worked with them extensively on doing some of the initial surveys for that dam. You all have heard horror stories about cities our size that it's a private dam and the dam fails and everybody suddenly becomes responsible for it. We have been advising them on that dam maintenance for quite some time. The spillway, because it's within the purview of the DNR, which falls under our responsibility, we would continue to maintain the maintenance of the spillway, which we want to do anyway because the HOA tends to err on the side of let's cut everything out of the spillway And DNR and the EPA do not like that. And so we hear about that a lot. So we'd want to continue to maintain just the way we do now, but we'd be formalizing it. And we would be maintained, within the MOU, it would be that we are maintaining the spillway to APWA and DNR standards. So there'd be no argument about what needs to be in there and what doesn't need to be in that spillway. Again, haven't had the opportunity to talk to the HOA yet on this. Had a very good conversation with the current HOA president, which is again a new challenge for us because that HOA turns over quite a bit. So we feel like with this, as a part of this, we can make contact information very solid so we know moving forward who we're having to deal with. They know that they have to contact us if there's any changeover or if they have a designee just to handle this particular item. More than happy to work with them on best practices within all of this. All of this would be part of the negotiation on the MOU. In the meantime, I'm going to ask for the council's indulgence. We're now up to 5 trees that by the letter, I don't even call it an agreement, but the letter says, and the practice that we've had in place is that we will go cut those out and grind the stump. Very well could be looking at over a $10,000 expenditure here because there's now 5 and this isn't a one-off. Looking for the council's nod that I can spend that money. Those are the 2 items that we're looking for tonight.
Mr. Burke?
If I could add some information based on my observation living on the lake. Sometime in the last few years, I don't know if it's been the last 5 or 3, but the lake had people go around and girdle the trees that were right on the lake. At least 3 or 4 huge cottonwood trees. They went around, took a machine, and just bored off the outside of the bark all the way around the whole darn tree. So I don't want to pay for those, even though it's my HOA that pays for it. I don't think the city should pay for those kind of trees, and I don't think they should be allowed in the new MOU to continue that practice on any of the trees that would be in this understanding. I don't know who did it, and of course I didn't go to the meetings, so.
And of course, those
Things
trees
happen.
would not be a part of this. It would be the
Right.
ones in the
But
median,
the
but
tree-
if they're,
there could be one right there where, right by the pool house, there, if that one was done, that one could be, one of the ones that would be girdled. I can guarantee, I know that one. So I went around afterwards, because I was kind of angry about it, honestly. One of them's, anyway. that's-
we would make sure that, I think to address that concern, we would want to make sure that all of the maintenance on these trees, if they were wanting to go out and do maintenance on a tree, they need to let us know because ultimately if they kill the tree, we're responsible for cutting it down.
Right, so it needs to be done with an arborist and not just some guy with a rope.
Yeah, Mr. Barber, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. How'd we get into the being responsible for the trees in the first place? And I'll go ahead and make a comment on, should we take care of those 5 trees right now? I kind of think if we're gonna have an agreement with them, are those trees in danger or putting anybody in danger, or they just look bad? Because I think we ought to probably go ahead and put an agreement in first, because if we're gonna go ahead and do those trees from that letter, why would they do an agreement with us?
I think the ones that are currently in our right-of-way, maybe not the ones in the median right down here, but the ones that are in our right-of-way are posing a danger because they're in the power lines. And it is our right, we would cut those trees down regardless of an agreement because it's right-of-way on Lucy Webb, not in a median. So perhaps those 3, which they originally thought was 2, but we went out there and one of them's hidden. Those 3, I would recommend that the council allow me to go ahead and cut down. I think we have 1,200 apiece on those. And then these 2 down here could wait for the agreement because that's actually median related.
And how do we get into being responsible for the trees on Johnson Drive?
That is entirely a mystery, sir.
Mr. Mills?
One, I agree with Councilman Barber. I think, we need to keep as much leverage as we can before, on getting an agreement signed. But personally, I would, if we can legally do it, I think our best option would be to say, all of our other subdivisions, it's their responsibility. We realize that a city manager basically took it on their own to send this letter. We'll continue to remove trees for 18 months or 2 years that are dead, but after that, they basically have ownership of everything. That would be my preference. But if we can't do that, I think we need to put in the agreement, if they choose to replace a tree, they become owners of that tree. Because like you say, I think a lot of these trees are not going to get the water, the nourishment they need, and we'll be back out there 2 years later, 3 years later, cutting down a tree again because it's dead. So if they replace a tree, it's their tree from that point forward.
And we absolutely had that discussion, and now Mr. Zur is going to bore you with this incredibly long dissertation that he went into with me.
You just say yes or no. You don't have to say.
So the simple answer is yes, and we would have the ability to have tags put on those trees. The tags would allow us to understand exactly which ones are ours and which ones have been replaced at a later time. Our city arborist has identified how to get those tags and how we'd go about putting them on the trees.
Mr. Burke?
What's the history? I don't know if anybody will know this, but going back, did the city used to use the lakes? Was there some kind of a deal with the sewer here, and that was our city water, or before that, Silver Lake was actually part of the city? What was? I mean, it might be relevant to how some of these strange practices came in place.
So there was original town, and then there was Silver Lake, and the city used Silver Lake for both its solid waste disposal and as its source of water. Never a good idea. But that was the agreement that was in place, and we suspect, we can't find anything, but we suspect that it had to do with using their lake for both of those items, that a lot of these informal agreements got put into place at the time. But it is clear, because Mr. Gress has done some exhaustive research on this, and it's clear that anything that's down there is of a verbal nature, and because there is nothing in writing on this. This is 2012 is the only thing we have in black and white.
Yes. Yes, sir. No question. Go ahead.
Do we have any idea of total number of trees we'd be talking about? If we had to cut down everything, what kind of number would we be looking at?
If we clear cut,
Everything that's in the median, if you will, that we would have, no, I'm sorry. No, not a forest cutting, just the stuff that would be ours if that died.
yeah, it's 50 to 80 trees in the medians. That
see.
does not include Lucy Webb, which is limited.
I'm a little proponent of what Councilmember Mills said. I think I'd extend the years a little bit out, but saying after 5 years, we aren't paying anymore. Anything that goes down in the medians is yours. Anything you put in is yours. We'll continue this because of a legacy agreement, if you can't come up with a better term, but give it a reasonable time. Otherwise, I mean, we're talking keeping the city on that hook for possibly decades. Like I said, I think a reasonable amount of time, and we basically wean them off of it. We'll take care of what we need to. Unless they go and girdle everything to kill it so we get rid of it.
Staff would absolutely, well, that was part of the conversation as well over the last 8 months, is what ends up happening here. I'm going to let Mr. Zur talk to the legality of this letter. And this is the first time I've asked him this question, because again, we're asking the council tonight for the okay to go down and propose all this. Oh, by the way, you guys, we'd kind of like the MOU to say you own everything. That'd be our first pass. They're going to come back. So, Mr. Zur, could you
talk about this.
Sure. So from a legal standpoint, the city did not enter into that agreement. You have a practice and procedure that's been in place for decades now that has established a expectation. Whether or not that expectation could be enforced in court, I have real suspicion against. But from my perspective, it does at least present it as an issue for them to raise. Hey, Homes Association entered into this agreement. We don't know when or how long ago, but we provided you with valuable services and being able to use our lake for water and sewer. There's nothing that's been written out for it. We've earned some degree of benefit from it. I don't think it flies ultimately in court, but you do have the issue of having to address it.
And that would be assuming that they took us to court on it. But the other problem becomes an MOU that the council has voted to approve and sign that they're refusing to sign leaves us in a real limbo. And I guess then you're at odds with an entire HOA in the city that we always want to be supportive of, going, okay, well, you didn't sign it, so we're just not going to do anything.
Yes, Kevin?
I like the having a sunset on it, the agreement, but the trees that are in our right-of-way, you talk about on Lucy Webb, what's our recourse as far as making them, city didn't plant those trees, right?
Actually, I think we did.
We did in the right-of-way? Okay, well,
The
forget it then.
Lucy Webb trees are kind of over here compared to the ones in the median.
Okay.
It was a whole different,
I was gonna say we could go back on them and say those trees are in the right-of-way, you planted them, you take, as part of the negotiation, we're gonna make you take them out. And then here's your MOU. But if we did it, then, yeah, what's that?
it could have been.
Yeah. But another question too, who trims the trees? Who, if a limb breaks?
Right now, absolutely nobody. And if you're coming off of 58, this little berry tree down here is starting to get my truck every single time I make the left onto Broadmoor. I may go out there and trim it.
If I,
But now we've actually negotiated with the president of HOA Laura. So things are kind of going for this situation with the 3 trees, and we have the 2 in the median. But we want to get an MOU for the future to change this so it's actually legal, that we can protect ourselves. But what are we going to do on that? I mean, since we're negotiating with her just on these 5
Well, we
now.
haven't negotiated with her. She has contacted us, and I have told her, we're going to be having this meeting tonight because we need an MOU in place.
Yeah.
Did you have something, Mr. Zur?
Yeah, just real quickly throwing in there, and I don't want to go too deep into what the potential outcomes or steps and processes for any potential litigation or any potential court appearance would be, but there's an argument to be made that if you guys said no further after XYZ date and the association didn't agree to that, it would put it on them to make a argument that there's some agreement that you've got. They'd have to be the ones to do it.
Yeah, what the binding nature of it might be. Yep. Anybody else have anything? Yeah, Mr. Baker.
With those trees on Lucy Webb, I know a lot of times like Evergy will trim back for storm purposes and all that. Is there any, I guess, possibility that we try and, if we have to do an MOU, that we can negotiate with Evergy and say, we're helping you, would you want to cost share us? Because I know other cities, I don't think cities have anything to do with it. Evergy has the opportunity and right to trim back trees to save power lines.
They won't touch dead trees. They're the responsibility of the city or the homeowner. They do trim back live trees, though.
Another question, just the interesting history with this, but I was kind of going through their bylaws, and you said something about snow removal. And up until a couple years ago, they had a phrase in their bylaws that said the city of Raymore cannot shirk their responsibilities for snow removals, and they removed that in 2023. What's the history behind? I mean, it's a really unusual verb to have in there for that, and there has to be a history behind that, I would think.
The history between the city and the Silver Lake HOA has been, over time, a love-hate relationship at different times. And it has depended on, really, Mr. Peterman and Mr. Moorhead managed to soothe that out But prior to that, it really depended on who was heading up that HOA. But they went a long way to the negotiation deal. And then there was the whole, during that period, they dredged the lake. And there was a lot of negotiation on whether dredging the lake was a good idea, because dredging a lake like that puts a lot of pressure on the dam. And so we had months of discussion on that and trying to look for some kind of backup on, which they never were able to provide on, okay, if you go this deep, what's that going to do to the dam and the impact on the dam? They just did it. The promise we had out of them was that they would almost immediately remove the dredging bags, and that took a lot longer than we actually expected it to. But they were great for growing trees. They were there long enough to.
Okay, so what do we need?
Number
I know
one,
you guys
look-
have taken notes tonight from
Right.
some suggestions made here this evening.
Number one, we are just hoping for a nod from the council to enter into MOU negotiations, with the goals being kind of what we've heard here and what we've outlined as well, would be our starting point in the MOU negotiation. Keep the council updated on coming back, if the council's okay with us going into MOU negotiation. Because eventually you would see the result of that legislatively.
Basically, the MOU is another example of the development agreement that wasn't done previously when everything was going in. So what we're trying to do is kind of catch up and codify things that are more consistent with what's going on in the city, right?
Exactly.
Mr. Mills?
I mean, I guess if we have to use the term negotiation, that's fine, but I really think there's really not a lot of negotiation. We go in with, this is what we do. Our negotiation is whether we're gonna give them 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, take ownership. I don't think we go in trying to negotiate bits and pieces of that letter. I think we come in, if you want to say strong, or this is what we do with everybody else, and this is what we're going to do for you, but because of history, we're going to give you time to be able to do this. I'd really like to see us be strong on that. And like Mr. Zer said, if they don't agree or don't want to do it, we operate under that, and they would have to take us to court. I just don't want to see us negotiating line by line of that letter.
His, right.
Yeah, that's why I don't like that term negotiation too much, but.
The term negotiation, I use it only because they're gonna be getting hit cold with this, and we would be naive to think they're not gonna come back with a response. We have to plan for a response that's not going to be what we originally put out there, and have a plan in place for how we're gonna respond to that response. But the council who's had a history with me on the other thing that he cursed me with, I think the council knows I don't usually come in any other way but strong on a situation like this.
So as we negotiate or set that in motion, what are we gonna do about the trees now that are in our right of way and the 2 smaller trees that are in?
I think what I'm hearing from the council is the ones that are down on Lucy Webb are gonna get cut, these 2 down here are not.
All right.
Until we at least have an agreement with them.
But then on the MOU would be an agreement, once they have an agreement for the future, those would be taken care of, but at a certain time, then it's no more. And which I would tell them too, if you want to plant, it's up to you, but trees or bushes, you will take care and maintain, those are your maintenance. Anything you would want to put back in these medians, except trees, maybe bushes, but you cut them, you trim them, but we're not responsible.
Right, that's
if
the
you-
tagging program Mr.
Yeah.
Zer was outlining.
Yeah.
And to keep things uncomplicated, if you could kind of back away, Tom, just a little bit
Oh,
from the ordeal. I wouldn't, it's kind of between the city and the HOA. I don't think electeds need to be involved in the middle of all that.
I know, we've been talking about, it, and that's why I was curious, as a councilman for that board.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That is all, sir. I do have one item. When we get
Okay, let's go on with the other item then.
wanted to alert the council to, so this year, we had the usual number of issues that we have with fireworks. We have an unusual number of issues, however, with fireworks sales. And it has become a burden on, a significant time suck on the development services and inspection. I just want to alert you all, we are going to be bringing that issue to you all in a work session once we've had time to sort things out. Nothing tonight. The overarching statement being, and you saw what happened in California, the couple of issues that happened down in Texas. We actually exempt fireworks tents from the code. And again, the overarching issue being, is a fireworks tent something that should be exempted from the rules or be subject to more rules than anybody else? And we're going to be bringing that question with some observations to the council in the near future. Just
Are
wanted to
there,
let you know.
Are there any South Metro regulatory issues that they impose upon those fireworks tents?
They do, and that will be a part of the discussion, sir.
Okay.
That's all we have tonight.
Okay. Any questions on the last item? All right, no reason to go into executive session? All right, then we're all done here tonight. Thank you.